right, guys. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Office Industrial Connection Show. I'm your host, yet again, Cody Payne, and I got you a great guest today. Somebody very important in the office and industrial and, other product type space industry for getting, leasing out there. And, leasing is probably the biggest key that, or the biggest question that we get asked all the time. And so I wanted to bring on Sheila Matuscak with Coeo Space. How you doing, Sheila?
I'm doing great, Cody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for coming all the way from Chicago. So, so give us a quick overview of Coeo Space real quick, because, in the commercial real estate industry, and just as we were just talking, there's not a lot of outlets, right, for people to broadcast their stuff on. And so, everybody knows of just the couple select major players, but with how technology has increased over the years, especially the past 10 years, exponentially, getting your lease space out there, if you're an owner and you've got a building with, a good amount of vacancies, getting it out there more and more is more key, especially now than ever, to capture that audience. And so give us an overview of Coeo Space real quick.
Sure. And Coeo Space hits on a lot of things you just talked about. We are an open data community where we allow landlords and brokers to showcase their available space in a matter of seconds, and then they're matched with users in a matter of seconds. So we have a custom matching algorithm that essentially lets the user decide what attributes are important to them. So as you can imagine, what's current today is a lot of people are looking for LEED certified buildings, well buildings. It's amazing because if we had had this, 2 months ago, we would have been talking about the amenity war, and everybody would have been looking for, fitness rooms and yoga and bowling alleys and everything that, the landlord can provide for a user. But what Coeo is doing is really, we're trying to build a community where listing agents, landlords, brokers, and tenants can come together and find what they're looking for really quickly and easily.
Well, see, and I like that. And, you had a career in brokerage, and so, and in corporate services. And so, what kind of inspired you to do that is you were basically kind of doing what me and my guys here do, investment sale, or, back in the day, we were doing a lot of leasing out here. But what kind of inspired you to get started on the Coeo side?
Yes, I have been a long time commercial real estate broker, and I've been on a number of different sides in terms of being a listing agent, tenant rep, and even running real estate for a tech company based out of Chicago back in the day called Divine. But what really inspired me is, while I love being a broker, is I've always had a passion for trying to figure out how to create a little more transparency and openness in our profession and make things a little easier. I mean, what's been amazing to me is, while lots happened in the last 10 years, it seems to me that the market is now actually ready for this, and brokers are all becoming incredibly tech savvy, and all they have is their time. So if we can create a tool that helps them save time, it all leads to better service and better financial results for the brokers and the landlords as well.
That's very interesting. Do you miss the tenant rep and the leasing side at all? Do you miss the work on the brokerage?
I think it's super fun to see a building really and go from an idea to a fully occupied functional building. Like here in Chicago, one of the tenants I represented was called the Chicago Metropolitan Agency of Planning, and they went into a 2.5 million square foot redevelopment called the Old Post Office in Chicago, and it's owned by 601W. And I'd done other transactions with 601W back on their first Chicago building. And so doing those awesome transactions with clients that you get to know and they become your friends, I mean, it's hard not to miss those kind of things. And you meet a lot of entrepreneurs, heads of real estate. You get to see things from how a corporation looks at space to how a new startup looks at space. So I actually think being a broker is really a fascinating profession, because you have to be good at sales, good at analytics, good at market knowledge and having research. And of course, you surround yourself with the right people, but you really have to be a very well-rounded person to be a successful broker. And it's rewarding. Yeah, I do miss it.
No, well, and I agree with that. I mean, and now is more important than ever to have that knowledge base. And the transactional. I was talking with somebody the other day. The transactional brokers that have had success over the past 5 years because of the hot, wave, the hot market that we've had. I mean, I think a lot of those guys will unfortunately fall, on the wayside. That really have just their interest, didn't really learn the industry, didn't really, get to understand everything, and we're just kind of riding the transactions that were coming. But I think there's a little change up coming. But, I don't know if you knew, for the first 10 years of my career, I was leasing office and industrial out here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I do not miss it at all. I'm so glad.
Once you go to investment sales, I heard you don't miss leasing. I have a few.
Yeah, no, not going back. And actually, a lot of them. And so, an interesting thing, a lot of the guys that work for me to do investment sales, one of them I wouldn't even hire until he went and did leasing for a few years. And so he went and did that, and now he works for me. And a lot of my guys have the leasing background. And so, but as right now, the most calls that, as we talk to office building owners, industrial building owners, is leasing issues. And the activity isn't as, high as it once was, which is understandable. But look, at the end of the day, there's still tenants looking because there are leases expiring, right?
Absolutely.
And so why should landlords and leasing agents be looking into the Coeo Space website and platform?
Well, I think it's been sort of an interesting time for us in that so many people are now interested in virtual tours and are spending a lot of time online looking for space. So there's one good thing about a global pandemic. It's been for our business, at least as far as getting inventory on the platform. We've seen an amazing amount of inventory go on in just March and April. And so to me, it's more important than ever. And what we offer these landlords is an understanding of what drives traffic to their buildings. And so we're using SEO and SEM optimization tools, which just helps showcase landlords' available space and listing agents' available space to the world. So that's really no downside for a landlord because they're showcasing their space for no charge. And the worst thing that can happen is your broker gets a ping with a question or a request for a tour, either virtual or live. So we're excited to really offer this to landlords who want their space to be seen in a more open way. And I don't know why anybody would want to hide their available office space or industrial space.
No, you don't want to. It's not a secret that a lot of people want to keep. And so and that's what I've always told people is, getting it out on as many platforms as possible. Because, as you do that, when people search, I mean, Google's now what everybody searches. Somebody mentioned to me the other day. Do you remember Ask Jeeves?
Vaguely.
It was like one of the original search engines. Somebody mentioned that to me the other day, and I don't even know if it's still around. But anyways, I know when tenants look for space, if they're not using a tenant rep broker, a lot of times they just Google office space in my area. And so having, SEO picking up these options and having your spaces on all these options that, are pinging these sites is very, very key. So what do you see, how is on the lease side, because I know you'll also deal in a lot of co-working and executive spaces, which we deal with some of the owners and operators, but on the investment sales side, how have you seen the leasing activity been kind of, start of the year, which I'm sure was good, but as the coronavirus started to hit, I mean, what do you see activity and whatnot being driven to the site and what people are looking for?
What's been interesting is we've seen a lot more queries for industrial space, as you can imagine. It's a big time for grocery and e-commerce. I think what's interesting is then you have to differentiate between which industrial properties are actually good for those things. So we're in a big push right now to get more industrial properties on the platform to meet the demand that we're seeing on the site. On the office standpoint, we are still seeing inquiries, which is interesting, not as much for co-working. It's almost as though people are searching for their own individual suites and wanting a little more square footage. You're seeing not as much demand for bench seating and that sort of thing. And co-working, I think, could come back. I have a former client that's in a Tishman co-working facility called Studio, and she believes that co-working is going to really rebound and do very well because of the flexibility and the shorter term leases. But a lot of these co-working companies, the smaller ones, won't be able to survive because so many people have canceled their month-to-month payments. So we're not seeing a lot of demand right now on the platform for co-working, but we think it will change over time.
I believe so. And like I was telling you earlier, several of the co-working people that we talk to that are franchisees or own their own little independent, they've lost a lot due to the month to month, but they believe that there is such a large audience sitting and waiting and will come back that they've started heavily marketing to those people, and that's mostly out here in Texas, because as Texas starts to unlock more and more and people can start to get back to work, capturing that audience is going to be key because it is out there. And I believe a lot of larger companies are finding new ways to work remotely and not needing as much space as they once did. And so I see some of those guys looking into that model as well. But that's one thing that I would advise to co-working folks, especially out here, just from what so many of them have told us, that they're really starting to push the marketing to recapture that audience that they'll pick up from other franchises and other locations all across DFW.
100%. I think as states reopen, and Texas is obviously doing it sooner than where I'm sitting in Illinois, but I think co-working is going to have a bunch of demand for it because of that exact reason. Like if someone's about to sign a long-term lease and they scale back, they still need a place for a certain percentage of their population to go. And if the co-working can get the message out there that they're taking all the precautions on the PPE and the social distancing, and they've reorganized their space. And these firms are incredibly flexible and cutting edge in terms of how they're going to redo their space to meet these issues. They're not just throwing everybody back into bench seating and saying, enjoy. They're partitioning off in between so that they have, maybe they're using every other or every third space. There's a huge run on plexiglass so that you can have glass partitions. They're creating different ways, like one-way streets essentially through your space so that there's a traffic flow pattern.
Yeah.
And I've even seen Gensler came out with a new way where people will enter their space. Instead of a reception area, you'll have a mud room where you wash your hands, take off your shoes, hand in your electronic equipment to be sanitized. And then all of that will go into the office with you. And when you leave, whatever you take, if you don't leave it there, you'll go through that same process when you come back. So I think that co-working is probably going to be pretty quick and ready to adapt and change their space.
Yeah. So it sounds like a TSA kind of model.
Yes.
As you're going through the airport, going through the old, yeah. So very, very interesting.
I don't know if you're too young for this, but back in the day when I traveled and worked at Jones Lang LaSalle, I would run to the gate and the doors would close behind me. You had your global services, and amazingly, it was.
Oh yeah. Well, and now when you go through there, man, they're so handsy. Very. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it is. We call them they're very hands-on is what we like to call it out here.
Well, now they're trying to find a way to do all of that security screening in a frictionless, hands-free way. So even that's going to be challenging.
Oh yeah, no, but they'll figure it out. So, you say industrials, one of the more active types, which I can tell you on the investment side. I mean, industrial is like a tickle me Elmo back in 1998 at Christmas time. I mean, we listed a couple of business parks earlier this year, and I mean, they didn't even hit the market. I mean, we just had people that took them off. And so that's one of the things that more and more people are looking at. But what do you see? So you're saying the sectors that are most active are industrial, but how do you see it being affected, and what do you see changes coming moving forward for like the general office space? So somebody that just needs, like 2,000 square feet of a general office, or 4 or 5,000. I mean, do you see that picking up at all? I think out here, construction in Dallas-Fort Worth is still moving forward in a lot of areas. And so they're still looking at, building more and more spec, which is, not so surprising to me because of our economy. People don't realize how important the Texas economy is to the entire U.S. and not just oil and gas. But, with all the companies that keep moving out here, especially to North Texas, they've been filling them up. So, I mean, kind of what are you seeing moving forward as this pandemic starts to allow people to go back to work and people get back on their feet and businesses start moving again?
Yeah, I definitely don't think downtown office is dead by any stretch of the imagination. It was interesting, given that you're in Texas, in Dallas, and I'm here in Chicago. I heard just earlier this week that there's a company in Chicago who's headquartered here who has decided they're going to have dual headquarters and put the other one in Dallas, because Dallas, yes, Dallas strong. Dallas is less reliant on public transportation. So they felt that was a really strong hedge to Chicago. And so I thought that was super interesting. I've heard Chicago companies that are downtown are now doing touchdown spaces in the suburbs. So that could help the suburban offices, to have 10 to 20,000 square feet of collaboration, social distancing, high, sanitized space where a team could drive to an Oak Brook, for example, or a Northbrook. A lot of the companies are doing that. I was talking to one of my close friends from business school who happens to be the COO and CTO of DocuSign. And, they're in San Francisco. So employee morale and being a best place to work is key to her and to that company. And she said they won't be bringing people back until they have an outbreak plan, which I thought was super interesting.
Very interesting.
Is there the reentry plan, but until they have an answer for what they're going to do when someone who's been in the office calls and says they have COVID, they won't be bringing people back. It's almost easier not to. So you have a lot of different extremes. Like then there's a pharmaceutical company in the suburban Chicago who said they're gutting their interior space and going to 250 square feet per person, no more 80 square feet. So I think you're going to see a lot of the office people are really thinking through it, because they've realized that their companies are pretty productive with people working at home, but they do want to bring people back for culture, collaboration. So you think you'll see like 20% coming back, and then 30, and then 50, maybe even up to 80 if there's herd immunity, and probably not to 100 until we get a vaccine.
Yeah, and I know that in our Dallas office, they're kind of starting that where it's a certain amount of people. But, do you think that some of these large companies are going to look to maybe downsize since they've been forced to send people home and figure out new technology and new ways to work and, outsourcing certain things? I mean, do you think you're going to see a lot of people downsizing their large spaces, or?
You're definitely going to see some, like, for example, here in Chicago, Groupon just put half of their space at a building called 600 West Chicago on the sublease market. So you're going to see some people immediately react and try to recoup some savings there. And I think a lot of people probably got the PPP loans that are helping them pay rent for a couple months anyway, while they plan through it. But I think a lot of people will actually redo their space. And with the social distancing, while you might have less people in it, you're going to have a lot less densities. Gensler's even created a technology solution where they're using an algorithm to tell you how to reuse your space and how many people you can now fit on a floor. So it's really cool to see the tools that are coming out of it and the amazing strategic thinking and planning. Everybody has safety in mind, and I think it will change office space. But I don't think the 60-year trend we've seen of companies coming to downtown places because that's where they can access the most talent is going to change. And so the space might shift. You're going to have different kind of space that requires a lot less density.
Yeah.
foreseeable future. I think it's like 9/11 in travel, which you alluded to, which is it changed the way we travel. This is going to change the way we commute, work together, and that sort of thing.
I believe that, and from some of the companies and business owners that I've talked to, they've found ways to utilize less space. But then you got people like my father who are, he's in the logistics business, so they ship freight all across the U.S. and whatnot, and I mean their business is exploding, because
Amazing logistics.
everybody's yeah, and so his business is doing real well. So they could actually use more space, but they're figuring out his business, their business, they've been around a long time, but they're figuring out how to, get their people to work from home and situate that. But no, I think it's very interesting. And, that's great that we're snagging another Chicago business down here. We love that.
I'm sure.
But, we do have public transportation down here. I wouldn't advise it, but we do have it. But it's not as necessary down here.
Oh,
and
it's just a different way to live and be. But,
yeah.
In Chicago, a lot of people use the public transportation. And I think that there's probably going to be a lot of attention put on it from the governor here and the mayor in terms of how to sanitize those. You're seeing it even in New York City, but it doesn't change the fact that you just have a lot of people in a small amount of space. So another thing we've seen, which is interesting, is some tenants are interested in going to Class A space because they feel like it's got better air filtration systems, and those landlords are going to have the funds to create frictionless entry and provide PPE and do electrostatic cleaning on top of everything else. It's interesting. It's like we're now in the healthcare field, Cody.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can go to the Class A space, or you can go to like a C- space that still has asbestos and whatnot that will also possibly kill germs. I don't know. It may affect you, and it may affect you in other routes. But we just closed a building out here in Dallas that was built in the '60s, and man, it was loaded with anything and everything bad inside of it. And so, but they're gutting it and revamping it.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I'm hoping that it wasn't going to be like, go to your asbestos building to fight COVID.
No, I wouldn't. No. I'm just saying that. I guess maybe it could be an option. Who knows? But those buildings, especially out here, starting to they're converting so many of those to newer, nicer stuff, or to hotels, which I think a lot of that's on hold. But so on the investment sale side, which is what me and my guys work on, and so many others across the industry, y'all are starting the investment sale platform. What can we look forward to on that as we look to put our stuff out there more and more to capture more investors and agents across the U.S. To capture that audience, to bring them to look at our investments? What can we look forward to on that as y'all implement that onto the Coeo platform?
Well, we're super excited about two new offerings that we're providing in the next couple of months. One is the for sale opportunity for people like you to put up and showcase the properties that you have available to investors. And the beauty of it is we can even include 360-degree virtual tours. We could do drone flybys. We can do a lot of things to enhance it, so people can select your building from afar. And we're also adding what we're calling the broker app, and it essentially allows you to showcase yourself and your team and tell people a little bit about who you are, so they know that you're credible and the kind of transactions you've done, and really just a little bit about you. And then the tenant rep brokers will have the opportunity to do the same thing. So being that both my co-founder and I are longtime brokers from mostly tenant rep, but we've both done listing and development work and a number of other things, we just really are excited to get the whole community using the platform.
That's very interesting. No, and we look forward to putting our stuff on there here pretty soon. So when is y'all stay-at-home order over out there?
It's currently at the end of this month.
Is it? Okay. So,
reopen plan. I don't believe the mayor has. I think the governor has put one out.
Yeah. They've started to reopen out here, and so that's why we're actually at the office right now. And so it's starting to get better and better. And I tell you, I'm getting calls, Sheila, from people in Chicago, in New York, in Washington, in California, investors out there that want to buy out here because they see that we're starting to get unlocked and they believe in the Texas economy. And so that's very, very good and exciting for us is we're getting more and more people to look. And I think that it's going to produce a very good third and fourth quarter. But how are y'all handling the coronavirus out there? You know, it's a little easier for me. I live on 7.5 acres. So I have a little more walking around room, but you can only walk around that place so many times.
Yeah.
But what are y'all doing out there? Have y'all had your fair share of frozen chicken or?
Oh my gosh. Well, I live in an area of the city called Lakeview, so you could walk to Wrigley Field from my house, but we are fortunate in that we have a Whole Foods a couple blocks away, a Target, a lot of carry out, which is helpful for me since my kids tell me I'm not a very good cook. So that part's been okay. You know, we are in a city house, so it's very vertical, and you have, you know, a lot of people trying to use the internet at the same time and homeschooling and 2 working parents. So it's a little bit much, and we're ready to go back to the real world for sure.
I tell you, I have never been more excited in my life to go to Chili's and get a margarita than I was the other day. It was probably the greatest experience I've had in a long time, just to see their smiling faces and have somebody else make something. You know, I've been making them
in the restaurant and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, they can only operate at 25% capacity right now. But yeah, you can go in there and they sit people kind of farther away from each other too. And so, but you know, one thing I did see driving by a restaurant is, since they're only letting 25% in, there's like a crowd out front of people just hanging out waiting for them to be able to go in there. So, but yeah, no, it was very interesting and fun. But we've been handling it well here. You know, a lot of the staff's been home. Our company's done a great job of supplying us with everything that we need. And you know, we've made a lot of good connections. And you know, I know this because I went through the down cycle, and I'm sure you probably know this too. Now is the time to really make an impact and get out there and, you know, connect with as many people as possible. And that's what me and my guys have been doing, is setting up a lot of people who, you know, are going to want to sell at some point this year, and just getting ready for it. And so making as many connections and getting out there as much as possible has been key for us. And so I'm sure that's probably been very similar to you as well and what y'all are doing.
Absolutely. It's been a great time. I think companies that take advantage of this to really increase their social media presence and reach out to more contacts and even have phone conversations with your clients or your prospects makes all the sense in the world, because people have a lot more time. They're not traveling from city to city and going to fun events, and you know, they're excited to hear from you.
Oh yeah, and you wouldn't believe how many owners and whatnot that I've talked to that they say, we haven't heard from our agent in, you know, over a month, over 45 days. They tell us nobody's working, nobody's doing anything. And, you know, the big thing that we hear a lot is, you know, people telling owners or whatnot that you can't get a loan right now, which that is just simply not true. We just closed out another project, you got a loan. You got to get creative, you know, just like back in 2009 when the banks locked up. The biggest problem that we had at that time was lending, but you got to get creative and find the right people. And so, you know, that just goes back to, you know, the agents in the industry and being, you know, the value of representation, I think really shines at this point, and aligning yourself with, you know, platforms and companies, you know, like y'all to help push stuff to the next level. And so, that's kind of my thought. And as we move forward, I think every week out here, I can tell you, I believe every week moving forward, it's going to get better and better out here.
Yes.
Until y'all stay at home order, you know, it will probably just kind of be flatlined, I'm guessing. But once it reopens, I can tell you, I mean, the just excitement, buzz, everything is just very, very excited. And, you know, every day that I've come to work, more and more people have been in the parking lot, more cars, more people coming. And hopefully that'll help the Amazon crisis that we have, because we cannot get next day packages right now, which is not good.
I'm so spoiled. We want everything.
I got I like old karate movies, and so I'm big like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal fan. And I just now got a Jean-Claude Van Damme DVD that I ordered like a week and a half ago, which I used to get it the next day. So not really happy.
Those are
Hey,
high problems. Yes.
yeah, it's a good problem to have. But hey, I do appreciate you coming on. And I look forward to utilizing y'all's platform. And I know we've told several owners who are looking to expand their online presence to leasing. We've said, hey, the more places you can put it, the better. And, that's just really how it works. And especially in the commercial real estate industry, there's not a lot of options. And there's not a lot of, good options. And, there's been people that have kind of come up and fallen and really don't tailor to how it should be done or are too broad. And so that's really what I like about y'all's site is it's very straightforward. It's this product, this product, this product, and it's just not scattered brained on taking anything and everything. One thing I was going to ask you, I was at a building, and this was pre-coronavirus, obviously. I was at a building, and they had the 3D goggles that you could put on and walk through a space that was built out. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah.
We're essentially doing 3D, walkthrough virtual videos as well, but you just don't have to wear the goggles there.
They had them, and so you could turn and look into each office, but I'm sure y'all had that technology. Seems like Chicago's got technology before Texas for some reason. So
I think they used that at a health club they got me to join before it was built like 2.5 years ago.
What, did you have like fake weights in your hands or something?
They just like put you in the 3D goggles and you go into the pool and then you went to their hotel and then you went to before I knew it, I was sold for sure.
Look at that.
Sign me up.
Well, when they put the goggles on me, I thought you actually walked forward, but he didn't give me the joystick to move forward. And so, but yeah, no, hey, really appreciate you coming on. If you want to say anything else, what's the website domain? Give us that real quick.
It's coeospace.com, COEO, and Coeo is Latin for to join or to come together. So it's coeospace.com.
I like that. I always wanted a logo like that. Well, hey, Sheila, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Cody. It was a pleasure.